everyone, and welcome to episode 466 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. I'm Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we have the full crew here this week. Kicking things off with the owner of MTG Goldfish, Richard. How are you this fine Monday, Richard?
Good morning, Seth. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing super well. We got some spicy topics this week. My God, there's a lot. For having nothing going on in the Magic world, and it's like the holiday hangover, no new sets or anything, there's a lot of stuff going on this week. But before we get into all that, we got another co-host in Krim. Good morning, Krim. Oh, it's the purple suit. I remember I was with you in that suit in an event when some little girl walked up to you and said, "Look, Mom, it's Barney." Yeah,
yeah, that's right.
Good morning,
I
Krim.
totally forgot about that. Good morning. Yeah. No, I'm not Barney, by the way. This is a Gengar onesie, a Kigurumi specifically.
Anyway, today it's really the drama cast. We're jumping around from we have 5 different big topics, I think. So Modern Horizons style sets in non-modern formats, tournament attendance, some AI art controversy, some fake card DQs, a Mark Rosewater post about complaining actually being helpful, and then answering some fish mail. So we're going to be bouncing around to all those topics today. Before we jump into it, a reminder that today's show is brought to you by Card Conduit, and Card Conduit's the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. If you ever get tired of the hassles of buy listing, you can skip them all with Card Conduit. You can use their curated service to send in as many cards as you want with a buy list value of $1 or more and pay just a 5% service fee. And if you want to do a bit of work, you can use the sorted service where you list and sort your cards in advance and pay just 2%. Either way, you're going to get a detailed report with the results and a fast payment once your order is processed. And you can even get another 10% off by heading over to cardconduit.com/mtggoldfish. Card Conduit, they're the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. We also have new merch over on the merch page, mtggoldfishmerch.com, that came out a few weeks ago, so check that out if you're interested. So anyway, with sponsorship stuff out of the way, let's talk some Magic. So first off, let's start with, this might be the least dramatic, I think, of our topics today. So there was a Mark Rosewater post where someone was asking about the possibility of Horizon sets. So the only ones we've seen so far is 2 Modern Horizon sets. The third one's on the way, coming to other formats. So the question is from Rotting Hellkite, if or when Horizon sets for a format that isn't modern, such as Pioneer. Mark Rosewater's response was, if, but a very real possibility. He later had to clarify in another post that there's no Pioneer Horizons in the works right now, but he did think that was maybe the most likely format for a Horizon set to go to outside of modern. My question for all of you is, do we even want this? Like, is Pioneer Horizons or Horizon sets in non-Pioneer, non-modern formats, is that something that's good for Magic? Is it the way of the future is inevitable? Richard, what do you think about this whole thing?
We learned our lesson, Seth. We were like, direct to modern. Why not? Like that seems like a great idea. And then the monkey came, and then the evoke elementals came. I don't think we want them messing with Pioneer in that fashion. Well, I think the filter of like go through standard, and if it's powerful enough for Pioneer, it's good enough. And then the power level of standard keeps that in check, right? You can't just shove like monkeys and evoke elementals into standard and keep it sane. Maybe they will, yeah. I don't know. But, it just naturally gates the power level of Pioneer, so your whole format just doesn't rotate overnight. So I don't want that to happen, but it's guaranteed to happen. Like, Wizards has this list of like 5,000 products they need to make next year, right? And there's like so many Commander remastered and whatever, Modern Horizons 4 and 8 or whatever they can do. They gotta be like, well, there's Pioneer and I don't know, Pauper and whatever, right? Like they're gonna do it eventually. So brace yourselves.
Yeah, I mean, if you'll print double feature, you'll definitely print Pioneer Horizons. But Krim, what do you think about this?
I mean, yeah, I don't really want it, to be honest with you. I don't think I want anything that would be. I think Modern Horizons was fun. I think that if we, I don't know, like as much as I dislike some of the things that came out of Modern Horizons, I like we would also lose out on some cool things as well. So we would lose out on like the Archmage's charms, and we would lose out on like they're okay.
Goes right to the counter spell.
Fierce guardianships. What else was there outside of those?
There are good cards. Like Soul Herder's Suite, Sevian and Merfolk. Like a lot of the stuff that propped up lower tier decks, I really like and I still like. So I do agree with you. Yeah, Kaya's Guy. Another Esper control card.
Kaya's
has a very big
list
of Esper control cards to come from Modern Horizons too. But what about Pioneer though, Krim? Like, so Modern Horizons, obviously, I agree with you. I'm still glad they did it. I think it kind of ruined Modern to some extent, but a lot of good things came from it as well. So I don't want them to stop doing Modern Horizons. The cat's out of the bag. But what about bringing it to other formats? Like, do you want to see Pioneer Horizons?
I think with where Modern is as a format, because it's lost, is like it's fine. You can let Modern Horizons run wild, right, on Modern, because everything runs wild in Modern. It's just like a totally like untamed format. But for some form of like some semblance of like normalcy and like I guess balance, I think Pioneer is definitely something I don't think you can allow a Horizon set to hit. Because I think that like maybe like that's just going to be too much for Pioneer. Pioneer is too weak. There's not enough answers to like go around in Pioneer to answer whatever wild things you let loose through a Horizon set. I think Richard is definitely right. I think it should just go through standard. So how about we work on standard Horizons right now? I think standard Horizons is what I want before you worry about a Pioneer Horizons or a Commander Horizons or whatever. Just let it go through standard, let it trickle down, and like standard's good right now. So standard's amazing. So I want standard to be like Richard had mentioned, standard can balance it out, and then once it goes through there, it can maybe trickle down in other formats.
Didn't we used to have standard Horizons and they were called core sets, basically? Weren't core sets kind of like a yearly standard Horizons in some ways? I almost wish we would bring those back. I would like something similar to that. I think here's my issue with Pioneer Horizons, and I'm like a hard no, very hard no on it. I think we really need a format that is untainted by supplemental products. Like, we do want a format to exist, right? Where you can play your rotated standard cards. And that's not Modern anymore. In a world of Modern Horizons, Modern is not that format. The idea that you can just take your old standard cards and like have any amount of success, absolutely silly in 2024. Like, that's just not going to happen. Pioneer is that format though. Like, and that's a big part of what differentiates Pioneer from Modern. Modern at this point is the place where you get all these supplemental cards, you get Universes Beyond. I think that not having all those cards, not having the supplemental products, is really what makes Pioneer Pioneer. Like, I think the day they print Pioneer Horizons is the day that, like, Pioneer as we know it essentially dies. Like, that's the end of the format. I also agree with Richard that they will definitely do it. I have no illusions that it's not going to happen. Isn't it the normal cycle? Like, so a few years from now, they print Pioneer Horizons, Pioneer becomes Modern, and then a few years after that, they announce whatever the new Pioneer is. Like, some new format that starts at 2018 or whatever and goes with that card pool, and it repeats itself. Like, that's how Wizards builds their equity and how they reprint things and how they give things value. So I think that is 100% what will happen, but I do think hopefully that's several years in the future, and I hope it doesn't happen, but I'm very convinced it will. Okay, any other thoughts about Pioneer Horizons? What about other formats? Is there any Legacy Horizons, Commander Horizons? I guess that's Commander Legends technically, is pretty much Commander Horizons. Are there is any format that you would like to see a Horizon set for? What about Pauper? Pauper? Oh, Alchemy Horizons.
So Pauper is hilarious because how's Wizards going to sell the product? They're like, okay,
it's true,
straight to Pauper, but we're going to make Mythic Common here so we can charge you $50.
Mythic Common.
It's a common, guys. Don't worry, but it just comes like you only get like one in every 9 packs or whatever it is. So they don't do Pauper products because it doesn't sell.
You can't sell it.
Directly all commons, and they're gonna have to figure out some brilliant way of marketing that to charge you the money for it. But that's realistically all we got, right? Like maybe a Cube product, but no one plays Cube. I mean,
Although Cube
there's
is
a
kind
huge
of like
community that plays Cube, okay,
growing,
but it's
yeah.
not to the same level as like these other formats. Same with like Vintage, Legacy. Of course, people play those formats, but not to the same extent as the bigger formats. So Wizards
I
gotta
think-
hope the community makes up a new format in the next couple of years.
Yeah, in the next couple of years, the community will bail it out.
I think the other thing with Cube is it's just like decidedly casual. I think even more so than Commander, proxying is just so accepted because it's not sanctioned at all. This is like your personal thing. So it seems like another tricky format to monetize. Crit mentioned Standard earlier, and this wasn't on our docket for the day, but one thing I've noticed that's interesting is I think Wizards' goal of revitalizing Paper Standard might be starting to work. We have like Standard Pro Tours coming up, and we have a bunch of qualifiers for those Pro Tours. And if you look at the prices of Standard cards, and I know this isn't a good thing, no one wants to hear, oh hooray, cards are more expensive, but we see a lot of like Standard cards that don't really see a ton of play outside of Standard actually creeping up in price. Like Mirrex is way up, all the Standard lands are increasing, Gix went up this week, and I've seen a lot, Sunfall went up this week. These are all like the top tier cards that are seeing play in a bunch of different decks, and I really think this is people building decks for qualifiers. Like this is people are going out and like building decks so they can go to these qualifiers. So is it working? Like this, we're almost a year into this revitalizing Standard thing. What, you're on the ground more than I am, Krim, as far as LGSs and stuff. Am I off base, or is Standard actually in paper starting to like make a comeback because of all these qualifiers and Pro Tours?
You know, when I have a buddy who runs a shop, and there's been an uptick, a demand for Paper Standard. So he's kind of started to run those events at his store now. And like there's been demand for it. I think people are now finally also I think people are playing it again, right? I think that's the main thing, and it's starting to build like kind of like a buzz, because people are actually realizing, oh wait, this format that everybody poo-poos on is actually good again. So lots of people are trying it again. And that's good.
And I think part of it, and this kind of segues us into our next big topic, but I think part of it is also like incentives. There is like, we're like trending back to this world where like you as a normal Magic player can go like win a qualifier and go to a Pro Tour, which is something that was really missing during like the MPL era, during the pandemic era when paper play like mostly shut down altogether. So I think that that's also part of it. And this leads us to, Richard, there was a interesting tweet thread from Cedric Phillips talking about kind of the state of Magic coverage, tournament Magic. Why don't you give us a TLDR of that? It was pretty interesting.
Okay. The source of it is kind of related to all of this. SCG Cincinnati, a 20K, meaning $20,000 in prize pool, had only 231 players at X cutoff date. I don't know if that's the total, but that was a tweet basically saying like, what happened to Paper Magic? Look at this super high positive EV looking tournament, and like no one is showing up. Like no one is barely registering. And then Cedric Phillips, who, if I get this correctly, he used to do coverage, right? But he used to be,
Sure did.
part of like this tournament scene and like actually like dictated some of these things. Like had this whole tweet thread about why this would be the case, and the TLDR is its marketing. They used to market very aggressively to tournament players to get the word out, and his rationale is you just needed to let Magic players know, and like any reason for them to show up, they will. And it's basically coming down to marketing. And the whole tweet thread, I think you should read it. There's a lot of aspects about like why Magic players do this. They want to kind of live in infamy. If you top 8 once, it's on the internet forever. I know this personally because people email me to correct their Goldfish standings from various tournaments all the time. But like, is tournament Magic dead? It's kind of the question, right? Like, for whatever reason, like either people don't want to play Magic, or Cedric is hinting at there's not enough marketing going on, or the events don't make enough money for the organizers, or I don't know what it is, right? But like, tournament Magic cratered because of COVID, right? But we're in a post-pandemic world now, and it hasn't really recovered in the same ways. So what do you guys think about tournament Magic and what this whole discussion is about?
I do think that there's definitely a lack of marketing, right? I mean, that was something that we did see a lot of, right? Way back, you always knew when there was a tournament because it was talked about everywhere. It was always posted like, like during set releases. Hey, they'd mention it a lot too, right? Like, we're going to see stuff at Pro Tour Phyrexia and it would be on the mothership and all that stuff. So I don't know. I just felt like definitely a part of it is that they pulled away from competitive Magic and they spent all the marketing elsewhere and into like more like to focus on more of where Magic has shifted I think in casual, because I do think that like competitive Magic just does not have any marketing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the marketing's definitely a part of it, a big part of it. I also think that like part of it's SCG, right? Like this is a SCG event, and like SCGs really minimize like their events. They don't do coverage anymore. They kind of moved out of the competitive scene content wise. So I'm curious, do you think this is a localized issue to Star City Games, or is this something that applies to like Magic in general? Like, is this Magic tournaments doing poorly or SCG tournaments doing poorly?
I think this is a bit of both, actually. I think that, like, yes, SCG as competitive goes, yeah, like it's a little bit of them. But also, let's not lie, I mean, like, Magic themselves haven't really focused on marketing any competitive stuff, right? Like, why do you care to go competitive in the current year? Like we talked a little bit about incentives. I just don't think there's a reason to care to be competitive. Like, even if I went in there, I won 20, like the 20K, you gave me a trophy. What does this do?
I mean,
Crim's too good for a trophy now.
But I mean, like the coverage matters though, right? Like that's one thing Cedric mentioned that I think I really agree with is like people want the deck tech, people want the feature match. That's why you go. Like Cedric's big argument was it's not actually about the money, right? Like that was kind of the TLDR. It's not like, oh, the prize pool needs to be bigger. It's like it needs more support, and people go to these events because this is how they like can get their 15 minutes of fame. You go and you top 8, you get the deck tech, and that's definitely happened. I remember the best example of this might be Chris, Batello? I might be butchering his last name. He was in the MPL, and he's like a very great player now. But the way the world was introduced to him is he went to an event back, this was like 6 or 7 years ago now, with the Harmless offering Demonic Pact deck. He went to a GP, Harmless offering Demonic Pact. He ran the table, made the top 8, and it was like this huge topic of conversation because he was in feature matches, he got a deck tech, and that's really how he made his name in the community. That's like completely missing now, right? Like that's just, it doesn't exist. Why would you play SCG at this point? Or like there's no GPs, there's SCG doesn't have any coverage, so you're not going to get any, anything out of it other than maybe some prize money. So I think that's really what's missing.
So of course marketing works, but if it's not profitable, it doesn't work really, right? So obviously if you throw money at something, you can get people to look at it. And what marketing was in the old world, right, was tournament coverage, right? That's all just marketing, right? Like marketing for playing tournament Magic, but marketing for the game itself as well, right? Like this is why Wizards does the Pro Tour, right? To that, so that you go and buy Magic cards. But then like the articles, I would say it's not just SCG because Channel Fireball has gone. Right, like if you remember the heyday of tournament Magic, right? Like those were the sites. Like those were, the people. You went there to watch the pros play. Those are the people you looked up to. We don't do that anymore, right? The biggest Magic celebrities are not actually pro players, or usually, right? Maybe they're ex-pro players, or they're doing adjacent things, but it's not the same way that like the reason I watch you is like how many top 8s you have, right? Like we don't really do that anymore. And this is funny, Crim, because I found this from the One Piece forums. But I think it's because...
He's on the forum.
I think it's because we're all boomers. So 5 years ago, I would go to an event. Like maybe 10 years ago, I would like straight up, hey guys, this thing is 4 hours away. I think we can spike this PTQ. Let's go. Right? And let's waste our whole weekend testing and go play. Now I'm like, I don't have time for this. And the thread I was alluding to for One Piece, and it was something like, why is everyone I play like an old person? Like, where are the kids? Remember when we were kids? Like, we'd all be playing games. And the conclusion was like, that's how the world works. Kids do not play collectible card games. The only reason we're playing One Piece or whatever, because we have this nostalgia from Pokemon or Magic or something from our childhoods, and we're playing this. Kids are playing Fortnite or something, right? Or they're doing TikTok things, or I don't know what they actually do, right? But they're doing something else. So part of this is like our inability to get new blood who has lots of time on their hands to go grind these tournaments. Because like Krim said, you win the tournament and then what? Like, I don't know, like you don't care anymore, right? But I imagine 20-year-old Krim would not say the same thing, right? 20-year-old Krim would be like, I would live on internet infamy, haha, like let's go, right? Like, so we're just old and we don't care as much, and you know, Wizards has to replace us with younger people that care to go grind for negative EV and get a promo card or something, right? Like it's a generational thing, I think, right?
It is, but on top of that, though, having what changes, what makes it so that, like you mentioned, One Piece, right? I went to the last regionals, and it was like, it was silly. There were so many people. It was like just my event alone, I think, was like over 1,600 people. So why is that? Like, and so I'll say that when you go attend a One Piece regionals event, you get silly amount of EV. Like, they give you these like rare lands, essentially, the resource system in the game. They give you these rare ones, a pack where you could open. It's either a $30 version to randomly a $100 version, just for showing up, right? And then as I showed Richard, there's a card, you know, like there's a card where if you get like top like 16, and that card's like $2,500. Then you have a top 8 card, and that card's like, you know, or if you win it all, it's like a $5,000 card.
I mean,
that is like,
doesn't Magic also kind of do that? I mean, I don't know if they do the door prize thing where everyone like gets a pack that has something in it, but isn't that like the Secret Lair Ragavan or Jace that we saw like a little while ago, where if you top 8, you get this. If you you get first place, you get the $5,000 Ragavan. It seems kind of similar, right?
It's definitely similar, right? So what is it then? Like, I will say that it feels like when you go to the average One Piece event, it's just higher EV, even if I scrub out. Like, if I go 0 and like 4, I'm not mad about it, right? Like, it's fine. So why is it that there, like, is it because the competitive scene in that game is like more like booming right now? What's going on there? Why is it that there's 1,600 some people there and only 200 for an SCG event?
Is there coverage and stuff of One Piece? Is it a Twitch thing or no?
It's so
I guess like there's like, there is coverage, you know.
Okay.
But it's pretty loose. Everything in that scene right now is like kind of loose.
But can you like get a feature match or whatever? Like, if you do well, is that part of the?
Yeah.
Because that's like completely missing from Magic at this point, right? Like, no one, I guess Nerd Rage Games kind of has a small tournament series, but other than that, that's just like doesn't exist. So I wonder if that plays into it at all. Like, are there a lot
buying clout thing? Because remember, like when you win the SG event, you get featured, but then you get to write an article on the website. Yeah, and I know a lot of people really like that, right? They're like, let me teach you everything I know about Magic because I won this event, and they're very excited about it. That's all kind of gone by the wayside. And I think, I don't know, it's like that motivation that is worth way more than any amount of money that I can give you, kind of, you know, like if someone wants to live in internet infamy, they'll do it for like negative money. And Magic players have done this forever, right? Like hotel, flight, cards, whatever the tournament paying you is not enough for any of this, right? All your testing time. But we did it because we wanted something. And I don't know, that's gone. Either that drive is gone or that carrot is gone or whatever. They're like, I can just get the same thing by streaming on Twitch. Like, what's the point, right? I don't know, right?
Yeah.
So
I think the age thing you brought up is interesting because there were some official numbers that I think it was the Hasbro CEO mentioned in an earnings call recently that the average age of a Magic player is like 30. So that kind of plays into what you were saying. Like, it's a lot different when you're 18, 19, 20 in college or whatever. Like, you got a lot more time to do that stuff. When you're 30, you probably have a job, you could have a partner, you could have a family. Like, life gets different the older that you get. So you just don't have the time to, like, I'm going to take an 8-hour road trip to play this tournament for negative EV. So I wonder if the age of Magic players does play into it. Like, that's got to be higher than
right?
other games, right? Like, what's One Piece like, Krim? Is the average age 30 when you go to One Piece regionals, or do you have more younger players there too?
It's a bit spread out there, but like it's not like you're seeing like 11-year-old Timmy rolling in.
It's still
right?
older for the most part.
It's 20 plus, right?
11-year-old Timmy with his $400 deck rolling in.
Yeah.
Like, part of it is the money, right? Like, the only people that can afford to play Magic is old people with jobs. Like, can you imagine in college, like, just shelling out like $500 for a deck and then having it rotate because Modern Horizons 2 came out, so you shell out another $500? Like, that's rough, man.
You
So
definitely have
part
to
of
have
it
a
is
job.
the money aspect, right? You need a job. You need a well-paying job. You need a job that lets you take time off to travel, to go do tournaments and whatnot, right? So it all kind of just skews older. Like, just look at our YouTube metrics, right? Like,
Yeah.
we know that it's just old people that watch our stuff. Sorry, guys. I love everyone, but we skew older, right? We don't skew younger. So it's kind of part of the hobby. I don't know. Wizards really needs to fix it, right? Because 5 more years and we'll all actually be just dead.
Yeah, that's
we're getting kind of old, right? Like, we were on the fringe of tournament playable. Now we're like, I'll just sling some commander cards. But in 5 more years, like, I don't know about this, right? So we gotta get younger people in.
It's like Tarmogoyf. It's the same trajectory. You can start off $200 young and healthy, and next thing you know, you're a $10 mythic no one wants to open.
But you'll always be mythic in my eyes, Seth.
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder, how do we do that? How do we get more? Is it like, can we get more younger people into the game? Like, is that even possible? Or is there something inherently like Magic's so complex, it's slow, it's expensive? Like, how do we get younger people in, or can we not?
It's exactly like you just mentioned. It's slow, right? It's like, I feel like nowadays trading card games, collectibles are awesome, right? People love collecting. That's a different thing. But actually playing the thing, that requires time, dedication, getting good at it, understanding it, and all of that. And especially when there's things like, have you heard of like TFT, Seth?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like an auto battler, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like an auto battler, sure. And everybody hears auto battler, immediately they're off put. With reality, it's a draft. You're drafting.
Hey, I like auto battlers, so it's not I don't have any negative connotation for auto battlers. I actually like them, so.
No. But I mean, like, just like people in general, though, like, it's like, okay, well,
Oh,
auto
right.
battler sounds like another genre of something else that I have to learn. But in reality, yeah, exactly, Bear agrees.
Hey, bud,
It's just drafting. And what's the best part of drafting? The drafting. Not like playing your draft deck, like seeing it come together is cool. But really, it's all about how your draft goes. And as, you know, video games and stuff like that, like TFT come out, it's like, why would I want to play a trading card game?
Yeah.
'Cause,
or
right?
like Fortnite. Like, kids
Yeah.
want to play a game of Fortnite. Like, there's so many other options, and maybe trading card games. Do you think you'll be able to get your kid into Magic, Richard, or is it just impossible these days? Like, you're gonna live this firsthand in a couple of years here. Like, is it gonna be a tough sell, you think?
I think so, because here's why it's a tough sell, right? Because his friends need to play it too. So I gotta not only brainwash my son, I gotta brainwash all his friends, because it's not like, oh, that cool thing you do with dad. He's like, dad, I don't want to do this. I'm gonna go get good at Fortnite or something, right? Like, whatever the new Fortnite is by that time. So I don't know. I go back to the Saturday morning cartoon. You gotta brainwash them when they're young. You gotta hit them at the at the young age. When they're 5 years old, implant that IP into them. This is why I think the universes within things should be very strong, right? Like, trading card games, relic of the past. Like, playing with physical cards, but you could take your Magic IP, throw it into TFT, whatever the new TFT is in 5 years, 10 years, and have a great game. And then your company lives on and your IP lives on when this thing of like mana and tapping and for some reason holding digital cards or physical cards goes away. So I think that's the easy way out. But like, just imagine to a kid. So you sit down and play a game, and there's like a 10% chance you do absolutely nothing because your deck doesn't line up. You're like, well, that seems like a dumb game. I'm out of here, right? Like that's kind of Magic, right? And we're used to it because we grew up with it, but it's kind of dumb
Definitely
for a game.
some conditioning that you have to do to yourself. It's like, yo, you know what's gonna be fun? I'm gonna go 4 hours, 8 hours, fly 24 hours away to get land screwed.
You want to play a game? First, throw away your PS5. You got to sell it. Right? We need that money to buy a deck, okay? You don't even know what this game is about? Don't worry. It's worth it. Just take that $500 and buy this deck. But you got to read spoilers first to make sure nothing gets reprinted or your deck isn't power crept immediately. But don't worry. We're going to start playing soon. Like, it's very convoluted.
Yeah, it's a lifestyle, really. Like it takes a lot. Yeah, I don't know. But what happens in 10 more years from the other perspective? Like, is the average age of Magic player going to be 40 and then in 20 years 50? Like, or do people start to drop off eventually? Like, wow, that's the scary part,
actually,
right?
Okay. We have our YouTube metrics. We could check our average age every year for the last 10 years to see if it's just increasing by 1 every year as we drag our audience through time. But I think so far, roughly, it's been that. Like, how many people have started playing since, like, I don't know, Baldur's Gate or something, right? Like, it's
Actually, okay. I think the thing here is, like, there have been new players, but it's still the same age group.
Yeah,
right.
There are people that come back. So War of the Spark brought back a lot of people that started in like 4th edition. Like the initial boom of Magic, it brought them back, but it didn't. I don't know if it did or not, but like it was not like all new blood and all these Fortnite kids overran my game, right? It was like, oh, yes, boomer friend, you're here again. we played in a primary school, yes, right?
We saw that in Lord of the Rings too. Yeah, maybe that's what happens is we don't get young people. We just keep recycling the same boomers.
I mean, and I think that's the thing though, right? That's why this Universes Beyond thing I think is like one of the more important things too to happen to Magic. It's because yes, we aren't going to bring in younger like demographics, but we will bring in like the Lord of the Rings crowd, the Warhammer crowd, right? The Doctor Who crowd, like those kind of things, right? So like as long as I guess that happens, the game is just fine, right? Because as long as it gets new blood, it doesn't have to exactly be the younger demographic. Plus, then that means that it could be like a game for whales. Right? Like, let's not lie here. Magic the Gathering, game for whales.
You know what's funny?
Oh, go ahead.
Just one more thing. So all the new card games that come up that I've been playing. So Marvel Snap, One Piece. No, like very rarely do you come across like the new card game player. Like everyone is like, oh, I came from Yu-Gi-Oh! I came from Pokemon. I came from Magic. I'm here. One Piece. Let's go. Right? When I play other games like Baldur's Gate, people are like, I've never played D&D before or an RPG. What am I doing, guys? Or like Hawkeye Star Rail. There's so many people like, I've never played a gacha game in my life. What the heck's going on? But with card games, it's always like, I'm like almost ex-pro guys. I'm like a 10-year veteran. I've played this game, that game, this game. It's like card game players recycle themselves on like new card games. I noticed that trend a little bit too.
Maybe that's like a necessity though, just because they're so hard to pick up. Like if you don't know card games, period, learning any of those is pretty tricky, right? If you have no foundation in card games. But once you have a foundation in card games, like we knew Magic, Krim like showed us One Piece. We're not masters or anything, but it was relatively easy to pick up if you know another card game. And I think like Hearthstone was kind of like that. If you know Magic, you can pick up Hearthstone like super easily. So I think maybe it's the complexity of card games in general, not just Magic, that like puts up that barrier.
I think, yeah, right, because like the investment into card games and then like how it plays out, like I spend 24 hours and like I get land screwed. Like, right, I practice, do all of this, and I get land screwed.
We should also say this, so it doesn't sound too negative. This is mostly about tournament Magic. If you go to like a Magic Con, there's like 20,000 people having a great time. So people will show up for Magic events. They're just not showing up to, grind SCG 20Ks or whatever at this point like they used to. But speaking of competitive Magic, we had some drama this weekend. So there was, I believe this was the SCG 20K, although don't quote me on that because I could be wrong. But a player got DQ'd in the top 8. In the top 8 for having fake cards. Apparently, this player had a playset of Ragavans that ended up being fake. There was a deck check in the top 8, and the judge realized it was fake. They DQ'd them. The player said that they didn't even know they were fake, and they bought them from a vendor, in who the vendor was and whatnot. So this led to a big conversation because apparently fakes are getting better. This is one of the big things to come out of this conversation is fakes are improving. Not only that, but the Magic print quality has become less consistent, which ends up in a situation where it's harder and harder to tell fakes from real cards, and there's more fakes around. How do you handle this? Like, what do you do about fake cards in tournament play? There was an interesting post from a vendor who had some ideas, like here's like the things that you can do to avoid getting DQ'd because of fake cards. It was Michael Caffrey posted this, and they had 3 things, like buy from reputable sources, keep tracks of where you got things from. The last one was get a scale that goes to 0.01 grams and weigh your cards, because cards from the same set and with the same finish should be from 1.66 to 1.75 grams. Like, is that a realistic standard to play Magic? Do you need to like weigh each one of your Ragavans to make sure that they're real so you don't get DQ'd? What do you guys make of this whole situation?
We just had a laundry list of things of why it's hard to get into trading card games. Now we're gonna be like, oh, by the way, you need to weigh your cards as well. Like the tips and all of that, the advice, sure, it makes sense, it works, but the fact that those have to be set in place is the problem, right? And so yeah, I think this is bad, right? This is really bad. If vendors are getting duped, then that means this is real bad, because now you how do you know if they know, right? So now, not like they could believe it's real, but I'm gonna have to verify it myself, like buying from places like TCG Player or whatever, or like any card place, right? I now don't trust anybody, right? I have to do everything myself. So I don't know. This is not a good direction to trend in.
Yeah, y'all gonna hate to hear this, but you know what you need? NFTs.
Oh,
no, they need to chip the cards so that you can take a phone or whatever and scan it, and you'll be like, yes, it's authentic. And the only way to duplicate it is like to get another Ragavan or something, slice out the chip, put it in your fake Ragavan. I was at Legoland, okay, and you can buy this cup that gives you unlimited refills for the day. And I went to the machine and it wouldn't give me any Coke. It said your cup is invalid. I'm like, what? The cup is chipped. Right? You go to the vendor, they check it. They're like, oh, the chip was malfunctioned. Let me reset it for you. They actually have a chip in the cup to make sure that cup is only used on the day you bought it. If they could do that for a freaking cup at Legoland, we should be doing it for our like $500 cards. You know, as we get these serialized cards, the 1-to-1 ring, they need to like splice a chip or something into there that cannot be digitally altered and that anyone can easily verify it's real. Like, I don't need to like read this like manual on like, if you rip it, it's blue inside, and if you hold it up to the light, it doesn't curl at 1.66 to 1. Like, no one's gonna remember all of this, and it varies from set to set and card to card. So if I could just put my phone in front of it and it says like, guaranteed authentic by Wizards, done. Like, that's what they need to do. They need to have digital signatures or something for these things so that you can prove beyond doubt.
That, unfortunately, that there's corners to cut, and that means that's going to increase the amount of money sunken into the cards, right?
That's true. They're trying to cut out a common from a pack, but like, how can you? They got to chip, like the holofoil. Like, it costs more money to put the holofoil on, right? But they need to make a holofoil thing that's actually bulletproof, because right now it's physical and relies on you looking at it and knowing something about it. I guess we don't even have our money chips, so I don't. Maybe it's very difficult. The technology's not there. Even the U.S. dollar is not chipped in any way, right? It's just fancy printing security. So I don't know. Maybe this is way more difficult than I give it credit for.
I mean, they got to be able to do something, right? Like, it was Core Set 2015, I believe, where they added the foil hologram, and since then, we haven't gotten any new security features. It's been almost a decade since we've had anything to like legitimize authentic cards. And during that same amount of time, we've seen a huge proliferation in counterfeit cards, and they've improved and gotten much better and kind of like exploded. So I feel like I don't know, like the best path forward. Maybe chipping is not practical for some reason, but it seems like there should be something, right? Especially going into this world of selling serialized cards. Like right now, we're talking about $40 Ragavans in gameplay purposes. What happens when there's like questions about the legitimacy of your 1-of-1 ring or something because you don't have any like security measures in it, or that's worth $2 million? Like, isn't that a disaster waiting to happen? Like, or what if someone counterfeits a 1-of-1 ring? Like, it took what, 2 months for that to come out? Couldn't someone have like
It's super easy, right? Because employee at the place that makes it can just print a second one. Like that's how like true counterfeits happen, right? You just go to the place that makes the thing, and either like everyone knows they're making extra, or some rogue employees making extras, and you make it. With stuff like original like alpha duels, it's very hard for you to go find like card stock that's like, you know, whatever 30 years old or whatever to replicate exactly. But something fresh off the printer is extremely easy to counterfeit. Unless they do something like a digital signature, or, you know, have security like the US Mint does or something. You know what I mean? Like everyone's a government contractor. They've all been background checked. Like every employee touching this machine can be traced, you know, that kind of business, right? Which they're not going to do for a card game. So yeah, it's kind of hard.
what do you do in a tournament if you think your opponent's playing fake cards? I'm curious. Like,
Sweat them out. This is totally. If you're willing,
am I winning? Am I winning or am I losing?
Yeah. Yeah. What's the matchup?
Yeah. Oh, bad matchup. Judge. There's definitely
we need a Scumby video on this. Like, like for real, right? Like if you are in a tight match and your opponent, if you know you're in the top 8 already, you're trying to make it to the finals, and your opponent has suspicious cards. It behooves you to deck check them or call a judge to. I don't want to point fingers, but I don't know, that looks a little suspicious. Do you want to take a look at that? Right? Like, it's positive EV for you. At worst, nothing happens. At best, they get DQ'd. So it's positive EV to kind of get the fake check on them for tournaments, right?
It feels kind of scummy though. I don't know. I'd feel bad. I don't know if I could do it. I guess maybe I'm not
different than
sweaty
somebody
enough.
like. Is that any different than somebody angle shooting you though? Right? Like,
yeah.
Like
I don't
if
know,
someone draws an extra card or something by accident, you wouldn't call them out on it in the top 8. You'd be like, yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah. If you break the rules, that's like
you don't
that's
feel
one
bad
thing.
about that. You don't feel bad. You're like, oh no, they made a mistake, but I got them. You know, it's like the counting your cards and you have 59 cards. You have 59 cards. Judge, right? Get that free win.
Is it an angle shoot? I guess is a question. Like if you think your
100%
opponent's card looks a little fuzzy, is it an angle
100%.
shoot to call the judge
It
on
is.
that?
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
It definitely is.
I guess like, let me ask you just one more thing. Do you think, okay, right now, right, like you go and look through your collection, you think your collection has a fake card in it, and you just don't know?
Ooh.
I'm positive one of my Cavern of Souls is fake. I don't know where it came from,
Rip
but
it.
I'm like,
Rip
this one's
it.
a little sussy. Oh, do I have to rip it for the blue cord?
Yeah, I gotta,
You gotta rip it,
nail
yeah.
with the blue ink.
Just
I-
break
I'm-
out the scale.
I'm willing to believe that now that you're hearing that if you buy from vendors, right, like you don't even know if like it could be verifiable, right, or like it's
Yeah.
a verifiable source, right? Like if that's the case, why wouldn't there be? Like I bet you something in my collection probably is not
Yeah.
real then, right? Like
Yeah, I mean,
guarantee
probably for me
you-
too.
Right, because I mean, one of the things back when I was judging, I remember I had judged a legacy event at like back when I worked at Channel, and like the one of the things that we talked about was that there's like just water cooler talk was like one in probably like maybe four cards at a legacy tournament probably isn't real, like just because like but like no one cares, right? Like I think that's like the at least back then. And I'm willing to bet that number, we might have been memeing back then, but like I think that number might become more and more true as the years go by. I'm willing to bet like 1 in 4 of the cards is some of my collection is definitely probably fake now that I like, and it has me worried.
Do you think that so if we're gonna say you can buy cards from a vendor that are fake without knowing it and without the vendor knowing it, we might have cards in our collection that are fake without even knowing it. Is it fair to DQ the dude who had 4 Ragavans that he, assuming his story, that he didn't even know and just got them from a vendor? Like, should he have been DQ'd? Like, how do we handle it from a rules enforcement standpoint? Like, how do you not DQ them? Because WotC has to, like, you know, protect their IP or whatever, like that whole thing, like from that perspective. But at the same time, it doesn't really seem fair, does it? Like, if you just get duped and you didn't even know, is it really fair that you get DQ'd in the top 8?
I mean, the thing is, like, even I bet you that the judges probably don't even want to DQ the person, right? They just have to, because that's just by the rules, right? And because you entered a sanctioned event, you had fake cards, right? And I mean, I don't want to get into the like, you know, the specifics of, like, you know, were they, like, you know, do you believe them, you know, yada yada yada. Like,
right.
Let's just take it as it is, right? And it is, there are 4 fake cards in your deck. Simple as that. I have to DQ you. I have to Dairy Queen you. I have to Dairy Queen you. That's how this is gonna work. I can't do anything about it, right? Like, so that's just the rules.
Like,
so
you have to do it right here, right? Like, if you don't do it here, how does Wizards ever enforce that people play with real cards? Like, right now, they're only enforcing sanctioned events, and they're saying for casual play, you do whatever you guys want. And so if they don't enforce it here, where would they enforce it at all?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess maybe it's unavoidable.
I guess, like, the higher the stakes, the more likely they are to enforce it, right? Like, maybe if you were turn 1, or not turn 1, like the first round, no one cares, but they're, like, barely even deck checking you at that point. But as you get to the higher stakes, like, that's where they want to clamp down, and you can't do anything about it other than part of your tournament preparation is know how to spot fakes.
So
like,
we're back around to
your deck, right? That's
back
around, right?
Back around to buying a scale. Then we wrapped right back around to where we left off.
Start checking everyone's Sheoldreds. Just look for whatever the most expensive card in the deck is, and then just start check that card.
All right, we got one more topic. This is the last big piece of drama of the week. So there was some drama about WotC using some AI art in a advertisement. So they posted this Ravnica Remastered advertisement. It had, like, the Shocklands in there. Apparently the background, people pointed out some inconsistencies that made them think it was AI art or made by AI partially. WotC said, no, we don't do AI art. It's not AI. People, like, kind of didn't believe it and were like, this is obviously made by AI. They got community noted. The WotC account got community noted by Twitter, saying that they were lying about it, essentially. And then yesterday, a couple days after, WotC posted a thing basically saying, we're wrong, we're sorry, there was AI used in the process, we didn't know it. Apparently it was made by a subcontractor or something. Like, they got this art somewhere, and whoever made it actually used, like, AI generative fill or something to do it. What do you make of this whole situation? Like, this was the big topic of the weekend on Magic social media. First off, my question is, and I haven't really heard an answer to this, does it matter if, like, so I understand Magic, part of what makes Magic great, right, is the art and the great artists. For something like a Twitter ad, though, does it really matter, like, how it's made? Like, I was a little confused why people got so riled up about a Twitter ad in the first place. I could see if you opened a Fetchland and it was, like, all obviously wonky and weird, but for a Twitter advertisement, like, is it something we even need to care about, this whole thing?
I think, like, if it's just a Twitter ad, like, you know, sure, that it doesn't really matter. But I think the point here is the message behind is that you're okay with using AI here, right? And then how long until it just eventually works its way up? Like, then it's like, okay, well, then why just actually not just have AI do all of Magic's art, right? Obviously, that's a bit of, like, you know, like it went from 0 to 60 real quick there. But, like, I will say that I think that if you accept AI here at this level, then that means eventually it just starts getting incorporated into more things. And, you know, like, Magic has wonderful art. It's the whole reason I got into the game, right? So you want to show love to the artist, not AI. So I think that they, like, I will say that it is a little wild to me that you just can't spot it. Like, you look right at it and it looks like it's AI, right? Like, I don't know. I'm not going to say anything, but I will say that, like, yo, hold on. You couldn't tell? Like how out of touch do you have to be to not know that that's AI, right? Like,
I'm the kind in my defense, I'm the kind of person who like finds new light switches in my house, even though I've lived here 3 years. Like, oh, there's a window there? I never noticed that before. So I can be pretty oblivious with those small details.
But
what
it's
do you
not
think
even
about
small. It's not even small. Imagine if you went to reach for your light switch, and instead of a light switch, it's just a TI-84 calculator on your wall. Right? It's like, why is there a calculator where my light switches should be? It's just like very obviously not a light switch.
I mean, the problem is not people complain the image quality was too low, right? So right now, there are some hallmarks to AI, which you can like look at and you be like, that's AI because no human would draw it like that. But eventually, and probably very soon, you will not be able to tell. And people would still have issue with it, right? Because they're having an issue with like kind of the philosophy behind it or something rather than the quality, right? They're not saying, oh, this stock image is garbage. Like, why are you guys giving us an ugly image, right? They're saying you didn't use artists to make your thing. And what's making it worse is the week prior, Wizards was like, we're not using AI anymore, right?
Yeah.
Because there was an issue with that. So people felt they were betrayed by Wizards. But like people always jump to the worst conclusions possible, right? Like, do you think Wizards would say they're not using AI and then purposely say, I'm going to pull a fast one at everyone like 1 week later? Or do you think some incompetence happened, right? That maybe there were like 8 people in this chain and like something happened along the way. Like that's probably more likely what happened. I will say this is a losing battle because you're not going to be able to tell what is AI and what is not AI. And Wizards now has the very fun job of like carefully looking over literally everything. Because controversy this is not the first time controversy has happened, right? There's the copy and paste and forgery like controversy, right? The tracing that happens in the art world a lot. It's just kind of funny because it's kind of a reason to do AI. But a lot of times people like trace backgrounds and then modify it in the process to make it not look so tracey because they can't be bothered to originally come up with the background because it's just a background. No one cares. So like this stuff happens and then from time to time it pops up. I know the comic book world had this happen a lot. And then now every time you get a piece of art, you got to look at it very carefully to make sure like nothing bad is happening here before you pass it on to the public.
Have that happen though in Magic? What's the
art
of the
all
card
the time.
again?
It was. There was a
a couple months back.
Yeah, and then Scryfall changed the artist credit to be both the original and the new one.
Yeah,
I remember that. But
I remember that too. I don't remember the card name though. But yeah, that did happen recently.
You got to know where your art comes from. You got to trace it all. Not literally trace it, but like trace its history and like know like it came from this vendor. And then this is what's gonna happen. It's exactly like counterfeits, right? We're just gonna be like, actually, I got this from this stock site, and this stock site said they were not using AI, but then they used AI on us. It's not our fault. Blame them. Like that's gonna happen, right? Like people, you go to stock sites and they're like, no AI was used, but then you're like, wait a minute, AI was used. That's their fault. So it's the counterfeit situation again. You got to very carefully be able to trace where the stock images come from, and then point the finger there. Because how else can you manage this? Especially when it becomes indistinguishable, right? Like when it becomes indistinguishable, how are you gonna look at it? Just like counterfeits, when you can't look at them and tell, how can you defend yourself? And that's gonna be a problem.
Oh, when it becomes indistinguishable, does it even matter? Like,
because
isn't it the same with a Magic card? Like, if it's literally indistinguishable, how would anyone know if it was a counterfeit or real? Like, why would I stress about if my card was real or not if it is indistinguishable from the real one?
Because the value of your 1-of-1 ring went down because there's 10 1-of-1 rings and no one can tell which one is the different.
But that's why they gotta have those security stuff. Yeah, you're right. Like that's what it comes down to. They gotta have a way to differentiate that.
You gotta have the AI art insert security into itself. I mean that's possibly one. Like it could be something like, if people actually cared, the government could be like, anything generated by AI needs to be self-identifying in some way. kind of like, oh,
Like,
what was it? Like they insert so like Honkai Star Rail beta client. Okay, you play the game, it looks normal to you, but if you take a screenshot of it, there's some security in it, and they can tell exactly which player made it. And I'm not saying like there's an ID in there. It's like hidden in the background somehow, such that it's not perceivable to you, but they can figure it out. So like if you leak information, they know exactly which account leaked it, and they can ban you or send the lawyers after you. But you can make it so that there's some kind of embedding into the AI generated image, and it's like government enforced. Like if the government finds out you're doing it, they come in and laying the smackdown on you because it's that important for humanity, right? And that would actually kind of solve it, right? But it has to be some like overarching big pain in the butt like thing, just like we do for like say airlines or something, right? The government's like, oh, we can't have people dying in the air. We're gonna make sure everything is super safe, so we're gonna impose these like 8 million unreasonable things on you. So we could do something like that and make sure AI art is self-identifying.
Yeah, I don't know if the government views it the AI art the same way as airplane crashes necessarily.
For us, you know,
Yeah,
like at some point we may be like, whoa, you know, it's getting a little crazy out here. Right now, AI is just like making meme cats, but one day it might get a little crazy, and then you can be sure there's like very strict philosophical. You can't just extract someone's brain and throw it in the cloud, guys. Like we gotta put some regulation on this.
But then it become the replicant war, and then you get Blade Runner going, and then it's like, whoa.
Yeah, I don't want to be one of those dystopian futures. I don't want to be Warhammer or something. You know, I want to make sure human civilization thrives.
Going back to the WotC thing, I think their one mistake, like I don't really blame WotC for the art thing too much, but I think their response was the first response of like, oh no, it isn't, ended up looking really bad when they had to backtrack it like 2 days later. So I think like, I don't know, maybe their messaging was the biggest problem in all this, like going back to like WotC's communication issues. So I think that was like maybe the biggest misstep on WotC's part, is just like not communicating all of this well. Like, because I think Richard's right. They probably got this from someone who used, like, I don't think WotC directly used AA art in this. I think they got it from someone who used it, and like the person who posted it, some intern maybe that didn't even look at it closely. Like the whole process, like probably broke down. But I think their communication is what really got them in hot water and really made people mad.
They'll learn now.
Same.
Like it was commissioned to a human or a company, and that human or company used AI in its process somewhere. And to what extent, nobody really knows. But it was like, I'm like, Krim, draw me something. Krim turns around, uses some AI, gives it back to me. I'm like, no, it came from Krim. Right? I'm like, wait a minute, Krim, what did you do to me? You set me up.
Anyway, I think those are all of our big topics for today. We got a couple minutes. Richard, do you have a fish mail for us?
All right. Let's see what fish mail shows up in the drama week. If you have questions, send them to @MTGGoldfish with the hashtag MTGFishmail, and we'll get to your questions on air. Ooh, okay. This is a fun one. Blue Team Turtle. What about challenger decks for standard, pioneer, modern, but as a secret lair with blinged out foiling and print to order? It's like the One Piece starter deck. ST10. So you make an event deck. Like you make an event deck. Like I don't know. What's the last event deck we had that was like?
Oh geez.
Pioneer, right? Like the Phoenix deck. And
I think the Pioneer one from a few years ago.
But you fill them with secret lair movie poster cards so that they're unreadable and like super blinged out chase versions.
So sort of like we've seen the secret lair commander decks a couple times now. So sort of like that, but for a pioneer deck or a modern deck. That would be interesting. I bet it would be way more expensive than people would want it to be.
I mean, yes, it'll definitely be more expensive than they want it to be, and they'll be like, we don't acknowledge, secondhand market stuff.
Yep.
But then it'll be a $300 like event deck, right? Like, which is like maybe $100 less than what it costs to buy. But like, I will say that I think that in theory sounds like sweet, but yeah, it's not going to be as cheap as you think it'll be. On top of that, in a competitive format, it is hard. It is very hard to print something like that into a competitive format because though they're print to order, so you won't have any laying around. It's like, well, by the time the contracts, the art's all done, everything and all that, is the deck even relevant anymore? Like, when we had that Pioneer deck drop with Phoenix and all that, Phoenix was still, like, viable-ish at that point, but all the other decks were not viable. So, like, and those decks were probably in the works, like 6 to, like, maybe even, like, 10 months prior, right? Maybe even a year prior. So I think the problem here is, like, anything like that, you can do that kind of stuff, right? The cute to brutes, all those things. You could do that in Commander because in a casual format, people will buy it for just because it's art, because it's cute. It's, all of that stuff. People who want to do the sweaty things, do pro players spend money on Magic? I'm very curious. When I was sweaty, I was sweaty because I didn't buy any Magic cards. I borrowed all the Magic cards, right? I sourced it elsewhere. Ain't nobody buying these Magic cards, right?
It's true.
That is so true because
Why?
you gotta pay for hotel, flight, travel, and you're changing decks like constantly due to meta, so you can't really afford like literally every deck ever. So it's actually But
Cedric Phillips is right. It is not for the money. It's not about the money because there is no money for it to be about, right? Like, so.
Oh, also, we missed this. This question reminds me that they also announced this week that they're no longer putting secret lair drops to order. They're going to be a set number, and once they're gone. So that was the other. Yeah. So they're trying to estimate so everyone can still get one or whatever, but
this is not going to go well.
It's going to, I think we're going to see more like scalpers and that kind of stuff moving into the market.
The
now
30 years of Magic bundle, the advent calendar one, and how that sold out in 30 seconds?
Yeah, crashing websites, selling out instantly. I think it sounds like we're going back to those days for secret lairs, unfortunately.
It's fine if it's just a luxury thing, but if it ever starts becoming like this is a set exclusive, like a new card, that's when it becomes a problem.
Yeah, that's what I get nervous about too. So hopefully we don't run into that, but it'll be interesting to see how 2024 shakes out. But I think that brings us to the end of our cast for today. Richard, how do people send in fish mail for next week, perhaps?
All right, hit us up at MTG Goldfish with the hashtag MTGFishmail, and we'll get to your questions on air.
And that brings us to the end of episode 466 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. So Richard Grimm, thanks for hanging out. Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And we'll be back next week to talk about whatever goes on in the world of Magic. So until then, have an amazing week, everyone. And this is a crew signing out.